Hello, the first part of Unit 7, we're going to review factoring. Remember, when you were factoring, when your a value is 1 for quadratic, so that's when you have your x squared plus bx plus c, you are going to find two numbers that multiply to your c value. So in our first example, we want two numbers that multiply to positive 12, and then add to your b value, which would be positive 7. So if we list out numbers that multiply to 12, we would have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So we're looking for two of these that add up to 7. And in this case, it would be 3 and 4. Those are the numbers that are going to go into the parentheses when we factor. And we're only factoring, we're not solving. So you are just going to leave your answers like this. And then you are done. Okay, so then letter B over here, we again want them to multiply to our c value, so positive 20, and we want them to add to negative 9. If you want to do the AC split method, you can, but when our a value is 1, it's not really necessary because we can just factor it right away once we know those two numbers. So for 20, we would have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. So in this one, the ones where I can combine them to get 9 would be the 4 and the 5. And because I want them to combine to negative 9 and they multiply to a positive, that means both of my numbers need to be negative. So I'll have x minus 4 and x minus 5. The order that you put them in the parentheses doesn't matter. So if you have it in the opposite order, that is okay. Okay, and then our next one, we have the negative 24. So actually, you can try these last two on your own. If you feel confident, you can skip ahead and check your answers. But for this one, we want them to multiply to 24 and then add to 5. So we would have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8. And if I look, these ones I could subtract to get 5. So I would have x plus 8 because I want it to be positive, so I want my larger number to be positive. So 5, oh, that's supposed to be an 8. I'm so sorry. So we would have x plus 8 and x minus 3, because if I do 8 minus 3, that equals 5, and 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. So that would be my factored answer. The next one, they should multiply to negative 32 and then add to negative 4. So if I look, I would have 1, 32, 2, and let's see, 16, and 4 and 8 would get me there. And if I look, if I do a positive 4 and a negative 8, that would get me to my negative 4 that I want them to add to, and they would multiply to negative 32. So I'll have x minus 8 and then x plus 4. And again, I wanted them to add to be a negative value, so I wanted my larger number negative. All right, so that's just a quick review on factoring quadratics with an a value of 1. Next, we have factoring a difference of squares. So remember, if you have two perfect squares and you are subtracting, you would have a plus b in one and a minus b, and you find those by taking the square root of both of these terms. So if we look at our first example here, we have x squared and 64. Both of those are perfect squares, where if I were to take the square root of those, I would get a nice number. So one of these is going to be x plus 8, and then the other one is x minus 8. And that is our answer. Same thing for this one. We would take the square root of x squared, square root of 49. You're ignoring the negative for this. And that would give us x and 7. So we would have x plus 7 and x minus 7. And that would be our factored answer. These last ones are two terms. They're not perfect squares or anything, so all you're doing is factoring out the GCF. So you want to make sure you are always checking for a GCF. So this first one, 6 and 9, I can factor a 3 out of. And then between x squared and x, I could factor out an x. So that means the remaining amount would be 2x plus 3. All right, so go ahead, try the rest, and then you can skip to the end if you would like to check your answers before you move on. Okay, so this next one, between 8 and 12, I can factor out a 4, and between y squared and y, I can factor out y. So that would leave me with 2i plus 3. The next one, between 10 and 15, I can factor out a 5, and between a cubed and a, I can factor out an a. So that would leave me with 2a squared plus 3. And that's my final answer. And my next one, between 14 and 21, we could factor out a 7. And then between m to the 5 and m cubed, we could factor out an m cubed. That would leave us with 2m squared. So remember, when you're factoring it out, you're subtracting those exponents. So 5 minus 3 leaves us with the 2. And then we would have minus 3. And that is our final answer. So that's just a quick review on factoring. It's going to be very helpful this chapter that you are comfortable with these factoring skills. So I wanted to make sure you got a good review before we move on. So make sure you watch the second part of today's notes.